Well, for more on Ukraine's election and economy, let's bring in Anton Fedyashin. Anton is a professor at American University specializing in Eurasian studies, the Cold War and international relations. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So talk about these interesting first round results and what you think it is about these front runners platforms that appeal to voters.
Well, look, first of all, let's remember that there were 39 candidates on the ballot, which is enormous. And we've wilted it down to 2 people who will be running off on the 21st. Ukrainian politics is really characterized by one thing. Ukrainians do not like their politicians. And every time one comes to an end of his term, no matter how popular when he or she begins, it's been he in terms of presidents so far, they're usually voted out of office. There were exceptions, of course, in the 1990s. And so the current situation is no surprise. The question is, what do the alternatives promise? And Zelensky has no program that he has articulated, but he's got 3 weeks now to articulate one. It seems that he was the I vote against everyone else candidate. Now he's going to have 3 weeks to come up with a specific notion. What interests me about him is that he sounds like a populist, but unlike other populists in Europe, especially in Eastern Europe, he's not a populist who pushes the nationalist card. That is President Poroshenko right now. Zelensky has so far been a lot more amenable to talking with Russia and sorting out the southeast Ukraine problem, the civil war that's raging there with Russian involvement and other countries' involvement. So we'll see what happens. But the economic program is really very, very vague.
Now, it's certainly not the first time that we've seen someone with no political experience somehow make it to the presidency. But given where Ukraine's economy is now, who are voters and also the business community, who are they rallying behind?
Well, the business community is going to be behind Poroshenko because the Ukraine is still ruled by its oligarch clans. And it's no surprise that there have been a lot of accusations against Zelensky as being Ihor Kolomoisky's candidate. Kolomoisky is one of the most powerful oligarchs who's been pushed out of Ukraine, literally, physically. His businesses have been seized by Poroshenko's government. He is in exile. Whether that's true or not is, I guess we'll find out in the next few weeks. But business in Ukraine is highly politicized and politics is highly businessified. So this is a structure in which business supports politics, and there's a constant loop there. And it looks like the Ukrainian people are trying to break out of this again, as they did in 2014 with the Revolution of Dignity.
Right.
But it's unclear how they're going to do that, because bringing in a candidate without a business network behind him, on the one hand, is good because there are no vested interests, but he has no base from which to strike and to defend what he considers Ukraine's state interests. So this will be very interesting to see how this develops.
So then, in terms of the biggest economic challenges that either the incumbent will be facing in Ukraine, what are the most pressing?
Corruption is number one, and this is something that the Ukrainians share with the Russians. Both countries face enormous problems with corruption. The difference is that in Russia, ironically, corruption is sustainable because there's a lot of money in that country, especially from the sale of natural resources. This is something Ukraine doesn't have, and its corruption is unsustainable, which is why we're seeing this popular revolt against business as usual, this marriage between politics and business. So that's number one. Number two, Ukraine, having severed its relationship with Russia economically, not fully, but to an unprecedented degree, has turned towards Europe. But the economic benefits of that have yet to manifest themselves. Your report correctly noted that Ukrainian economic growth has come because of the massive injections of foreign capital, IMF money. All of that comes with the request, the order to raise prices, which is partly why Poroshenko is so unpopular, because he is trying to do what the World Bank and the IMF are asking him to do. Zelensky will find himself in the exact same position. So economically, Ukraine is in a very bad spot. It has been deindustrializing itself because its industry was geared towards Russia and the former Soviet Union. The Europeans aren't ready to buy Ukrainian industrial goods. They simply don't fit the standards, and they're not part of the integrated Western economic system. So Ukraine has become an agriculturalized country, and that, in the modern world, is going to be a very difficult position to dig out of.
And obviously another situation, the country's dealing with its 5 years since the annexation of Crimea. How has the economy fared so far, and how do you see it going forward?
Well, listen, the annexation of the Crimea is not really the reason for Ukraine's economic woes. It's the corrupt system of government and the fact that Ukraine is sort of lurched towards Europe economically without thinking through the full repercussions of severing its ties to Russia. The economy imploded in 2014 going into 2015. Western aid has helped it rebound, but hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians are leaving, both for Russia and for the West. And in that sense, Poroshenko's promise to grant a visa-free regime has opened the door for Ukrainians to leave. The country itself is mired in this, slow economic implosion.
Right.
And although it's temporarily doing better, this will only last as long as Western money keeps coming in, and that depends on political stability, and that's something that Ukraine does not have right now.
We'll certainly see what happens with this runoff election. Thank you so much. Always good to have you. Professor Anton Fedyashin of American University, specializing in Eurasian studies, the Cold War, and international relations.